Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit clan of the Bunwurrung. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. So tonight we're conducting this meeting in a hybrid style with councillors, officers and members of the public in the Town Hall, albeit under strict conditions. Some officers and members of the community will continue to participate virtually via the WebEx platform. Now, this meeting is being live streamed via Council's webpage and Facebook Live. Live streams and recordings of Council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered, reproduced or republished without permission of the Council. Whilst we are operating in an online mode, there is always and often the risk of technical issues arising that are beyond our control. If we experience those difficulties tonight, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. So let's get started. The first agenda item is apologies, and I know there's an empty chair, but I don't think we have any apologies, do we, councillors, tonight? And I'm sure Councillor Pearl will join us shortly. 2 minutes of the previous meetings. Councillors, the minutes of the previous meeting on the 3rd of March 2021 have been circulated. Are there any questions regarding these minutes? If not, can I have a motion to confirm these minutes? Councillor Baxter and then seconded by Councillor Bond. I will now put that motion. All those in favour? That is passed. 3, declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? No, so that is good. We're going to move on to public question time and submissions. Now, our meeting processes have been altered via resolution of Council to hear all submissions from members of the public at the start of the meeting. And so we will now hear all public questions and public comment on report items. All the requests to speak were submitted by 4 p.m. this afternoon, and at that time of registering to speak, submitters were given the option to attend the meeting in person, join the WebEx meeting virtually, or have their statements read by an officer. And if it is read by an officer, their statements will be summarised. And could I ask for everyone to turn their phones off, please? So the first person to speak tonight, I call upon Janelle McKenzie. Oh, I should just mention, you will have 3 minutes, and I will be firm with the time. So 3 minutes will be your total time to speak. Janelle, you're speaking to item 11.1, Clean Streets Service Review Progress Update and Pressure Washing Service. Oh, you're going to hand something out? Can Kirsty or help you with that, Janelle? If you could state your name and suburb, and then your 3 minutes are yours. Just press that button.
Thanks, Lil. Mayor, councillors, hello, my name is Janelle McKenzie and I'm a property owner in Elwood. I'm here tonight to speak to you in regards to the cleanliness of the busy shopping precinct of Ormond Road and not forgetting Tennyson Street, Elwood. I'm glad that management have put together the document to present to Council options to increase service provisions for the cleaning activities centres through pressure cleaning and other options, which is item 11.1 on the agenda tonight. I wholeheartedly agree that more funds mic keeps going off. Sorry, guys. I wholeheartedly agree that more funds are required to increase provision for the pressure cleaning and washdowns. I'd like to bring to the Council attention that Elwood's current cleaning program of pressure cleaning is
Sorry, Janelle, this is a technical
problems,
issue.
Yeah. I would like to bring to Council's attention that Elwood's current cleaning program of pressure washing is conducted on a fortnightly basis. Unfortunately, this is not enough.
Keeps dropping out. So.
Thanks, Louise. Elwood is the 3rd largest suburb in Port Phillip, densely populated, with people choosing an apartment lifestyle, living with cafes, restaurants, bars right at their doorstep, which makes it a very, very busy hub. With the lifting of COVID, people are out and about experiencing what Elwood has to offer: the shops, the parklets, with outdoor dining, eating, drinking and walking their dogs. COVID has also led to many more dogs residing in Elwood. It seems to be nearly every person has a dog in Elwood, which unfortunately brings a lot more urinating in the street. The strips are not like Ackland Street or Fitzroy Street that are wide and long. They are smaller and pathways are narrower. As mentioned, Elwood's fortnightly clean program needs to change. If you could look at the handouts provided, these are recent photos that I've taken of our busy shopping precinct. As you can see from these photos, the bins are really dirty, they're grimy, they're stained and very unhygienic. Pedestrian pathways also urine dog stained, dirty, grimy and again unhygienic. Looking at these photos makes me feel very sad. I love Elwood and want it to be a pleasant place to experience whilst walking down the street. It's not clean, it's not attractive and it's not welcoming. It's time for change. Elwood needs to be looked at seriously. A deep clean twice yearly, possibly the suburb, to trial the pavement scrubbing unit. Or plan to look at a new streetscape for Elwood Village. New bins would be nice, pathways, dog amenities, street furniture. These are some of my deep concerns regarding the territory. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Janelle. I think those... Can you just say... Oh, we might just take a break, everyone. Beckes, speaking to item 12.2, extension to Albert Park College trial, which is the use of Gasworks, Arts Park and Lemnos Square. Now, I believe, Natalie, you're online with us at WebEx?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. If you could just state your name and suburb and then you've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Natalie Beekes. So I'm a resident of Port Melbourne, Albert Park College, and obviously has a lot of friends and other community members that we interact with in Albert Park College. I don't want to labour the point. Clearly this attention has got a lot of attention in terms of media this week, and I note this afternoon there's also been commentary by the Victorian Deputy Premier on this issue, so I know that the councillors are incredibly busy. But this is a significant issue that does need attention, and I note that the paper in the pack does talk about an extension of a trial. And obviously there needs to be a longer-term consideration for longer-term outcomes. The key things that I do want to point out is obviously I am aware also there's a number of submissions that councillors have received from parents in the community around their concerns. So essentially, as a community of the Albert Park College, we are saddened to hear that children may be denied access to parks, open space and between recess and lunch. Obviously, parks are public places in which people, and including residents, need to share and enjoy. And I understand that residents have expressed concern with noise, rubbish, land degradation and issues being reported. None of these issues, unfortunately, are equivalent to the issues that will emerge if children do not have access to open spaces, and that includes research has repeatedly shown the impact that open space, connection with nature, physical activity has on physical and mental health and wellbeing. including the development of social connection. Particularly, this is heightened for children, particularly in their formative years. And obviously that these spaces provide and assist children, but also in terms of prevention of health and mental ill health. And I probably don't need to also labour the point that these are the same children who are coming out of a year when the majority of these kids spent school in lockdown. And so I think that this is an important issue. Obviously, the councillors, you will consider in detail, but it is, what is the alternative? And that is what is the scary thing here in terms of children being antisocial, perhaps destructive, or withdrawing altogether. So I guess that what we're asking is that we understand that residents are annoyed, and perhaps rightly so. Perhaps the issues that they call out around poor community and city planning are a key issue. I guess that the key issue here is the horse has bolted. We have 1,550 children at least who need access to open space in order for them to thrive. And obviously with the outcome to be that they grow up to be people of the community and the Port community, more importantly, who are both physically and mentally well children, but grow up to be, more importantly, productive and effective adults that participate in society. So thanks for listening, and thank you, and good luck with your decision making.
Thank you very much, Natalie. I call upon Steve Cook, also speaking to item 12.2, the extension to Albert Park College trial of Gasworks Arts Park. If you could state your name and suburb, sir, and then take your 3 minutes. Oh, you just put the button on. I should say that as part of my instructions. Sorry.
That's okay. My name is Stephen Cook, and I'm the principal of Albert Park College and a resident of Port Melbourne. Dear councillors, tonight is an opportunity to make a stand in support of the youth of the city of Port Phillip.
I apologise, just everyone bear with us.
2-2. Dear councillors, we shall try again. Tonight is an opportunity to make a stand in support of the youth of the city of Port Phillip. Tonight we ask that you commit to our kids having a permanent presence in Gasworks Arts Park. Please demonstrate through your actions that you hear them, that you understand them, that you care for them, and that you will nurture their well-being. As you will no doubt know, their parents have already spoken via email, and there are many hundreds over the past few days. And Australia's leading child psychologist, Michael Carr-Gregg, has also eloquently added his expert voice. And tonight you will hear from our student leaders as they explain how much they and their friends, some of whom are as young as 12 years old, need their park. It was disappointing to us that the proposed change in location was published without consultation with the college. What was perhaps even more disappointing is that while the council's report lists the challenges of sharing a community space, it devotes not one word to the benefits to our students and to the broader community that sharing of the park brings. Again, the many hundreds of emails you have received would have made those benefits clear. I note that the report lists some concerns about the use of the park, and I want to reassure councillors that we take our responsibility to supervise our students very seriously. We have a duty of care to supervise our students at all times, and 4 staff are allocated this task every single day. I want to state clearly to the councillors present this evening, that we are happy to work with the council to refine and improve student supervision in the park. Let's make it work for everyone. There's just one further point I feel compelled to make. Over the past months, we have endured a campaign to remove our students from the park. It has been conducted by a small group determined to find fault. They have filmed and photographed our students, provoked argument and dissent with them and our teachers, spread disinformation, and will not be satisfied until our students are removed from the park altogether. A further 12-month trial, in my view, will only lead to further dissent, and we will find us revisiting this discussion at that point of time. So let's move beyond this. Let's commit to students in the park on an ongoing basis. They may not be perfect. We know they are not. But they are amazing, and they are ours. And after a year of being locked down, our children need your support. So, councillors, please be bold and send a clear message that you support our children by committing them to being in the park in an ongoing capacity and retaining the space that they currently enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. I'm going to have the same issues, I think, yeah. Sorry, folks, we're just going to take another little moment while we work out this microphone system. One. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I call upon Timothy Nolan, also speaking to item 12.2 around the Gasworks Arts Park use. If you could state your name, use the microphone and state your name and suburb, and then you've got 3 minutes, sir.
Sure. My name is Timothy Nolan and I'm an assistant principal at Albert Park College. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My position at the college is Assistant Principal of Positive Education. My portfolio is student management, student behaviour and student wellbeing. I often say to our students and their families that my job rests in the space of endeavouring to make all students at the college happy, safe and within an environment in which they can thrive, however that may be. My portfolio at the college also involves allocating staff yard duties, ensuring that the pressure points around our campuses are addressed. In particular, I have overseen the allocation senior staff, the supervision of the entry and of the park itself. And I want to acknowledge the land we are meeting on this evening. Acknowledge the First Nations people of this region. I would argue that this is not ever genuine or meaningful if we do not honour and uphold the values by which they lived and the stories of community that they tell. And isn't it interesting that tonight we meet to discuss what community, clan and family mean to us in the modern age? What it means to be together, use the landscape and resources, and of course celebrate our community and its spaces together. I do not need to outline for those present this evening the incredible impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic in 2020. While this state and community appears to have somewhat of a handle on management of the pandemic presently, this is relative to the unprecedented nature of 2020. Let me tell you what me and my team saw last year. We saw an increase in student distress. We saw an increase in disengagement. We saw an increase in child obesity and other negative aspects of physical health. It was and continues to be grim. I won't stand here and tell you that the thing to solve all of these incredibly profound and difficult problems is access to some play space for a total of 70 minutes in a school day. It won't, but it will certainly help. I know that leading child psychologists in this country have written to Council to advocate for providing our students with open spaces and natural landscape for their mental health and well-being. Aside from the fact that teenagers were in lockdown for over 12 weeks in 2020, and aside from the fact that they are members of this community and deserve the use of its public spaces, without open areas of greenery and space to passively play, sit and talk, I fear that we will not be able to tackle the issues of student mental health and well-being that continue to plague this group of students in 2021 and beyond. I deal directly with our students and I know that they have benefited from use of the park. The ability to go outside, sit on the grass, have a bit of a jog, enjoy the open and historical space that is this park is next to nothing to these students in terms of bringing them joy and positivity in their day. So important was the outdoors and physical activity during lockdowns in 2020 that physical exercise was one of the 4 reasons citizens were permitted to leave the home during the strictest lockdown this pandemic has seen to date. Yet here we are limiting the access to the outdoors, and ironically outside of lockdown. So for the sake of the mental health and well-being of our students, I urge Council to reconsider the need to extend this trial. I urge Council to reconsider the smaller allocation of the park, and I give Council my personal pledge and my capacity at the college to make this work for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Una Nicholson, speaking to the same item, the extension to Albert Park College use of Gasworks Arts Park. If you could state your name, suburb, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Una Nicholson. I'm the Albert Park College School President, and I'm a ratepayer residing in Albert Park for the last 21 years. I strongly urge the councillors to allow the school to continue to use Gasworks Park and not restrict the area to a corner of the park. I'm frankly quite saddened and also angry that a very small and noisy minority of people have taken it upon themselves to mount a continued campaign against the students and the teachers of Albert Park College. I have received a number of reports that students and teachers have been photographed and verbally harassed by some of the people who are the objectors to the students using the park. Frankly, I'm furious and outraged that members of the public feel it's okay to photograph APC students and staff while they have their breaks or are trying to do their work. The parents of our students see this as harassment and intimidation. The students at Albert Park College are people. They are our community. They are also our neighbours, our friends. Many of them work in the local businesses. They serve us, they make coffees and pizzas and stacking the shelves. They're singing at outdoor concerts. Some serve as volunteer lifesavers on patrol at the beaches. They are part of our community. They are not separate. They are not just students. They are not the other. During the week, they put on a uniform and they attend to their education by attending the various campuses of APC, a privilege all of them did not have for much of last year. The year marked by lockdown, of separation from friends and work colleagues and loved ones. In 2020, many of us in Melbourne discovered the value of our outdoor spaces and the pleasure of meeting new people at a social distance and of using spaces like never before. I went to Gasworks most days to walk my dog. I saw yoga, I saw people working out, people meditating by themselves under a tree. I'd never seen that before. People walking quietly and some people running madly. The COVID puppies were real. There is now a huge increase in dog spirit that rose in this area during lockdown, forged through scenic and our open spaces. Parks became safe havens. They are happy places, and rightly so. But there's a science behind why parks make us feel good. The research shows that the sight of trees allow the parasympathetic nervous system to gain an edge. It calms the entire body and it makes us more relaxed. And that's a good thing, given we live in an urban environment. So contact with green settings, such as parks, has positive effects on mood, self-esteem, and self-reported feelings of stress. The teachers and students have recognised the positive impact the park time has given the students. It's a peaceful place to walk, talk with a friend, or spend some time alone when the days get tough. So in conclusion, I bring your attention to the City of Port Phillip's policy for youth and young people. The vision is for all young people to be happy, to be healthy, and to be heard. Thank you.
I call upon Millicent Box, speaking to the same item 12.2. If you could please state your name and suburb and then speak away.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Millicent Box and I'm a resident of Middle Park. As well as that, I am one of the college captains at Albert Park College. Gasworks is a fundamental aspect of life at APC, something that we as students regard as a valued privilege and treat with the utmost respect. Great care is taken by students to abide by the current rules, remaining in designated areas, not playing ball sports, not using things, using pathways and generally not disturbing the general public and other park users. Our teachers diligently supervise our students and direct them in accordance with these rules. There are always at least 4 staff members and to the area around the swings. As school captain, someone who uses Gasworks frequently, I am so disappointed to learn of the portrayal of the behaviour of the students as noisy, trampling on plants and dropping rubbish. Moreover, APC students currently share a number of other community buildings and spaces. We have and continue to look after and enjoy the benefits of these in the same manner in which we use Gasworks, and there have been no problems with student behaviour. I would like to ask the Council on behalf of all of APC students to think about our use of a public park as no different to any other community member. Students only make use of the park for a total over just 1 hour a day. From this time, it's only Monday to Friday and only during term time. The only students moving between campuses during this time are seniors crossing the park in the same way other community members are entitled to when walking their dogs or benefiting from an open green space. However, during this hour, we are confined to the pathways. I would like the councillors to reject the proposal to restrict the access of local public students to a public park. We love our small corner, and we believe that we can continue to share Gasworks Arts Park with our local community. I cannot imagine life at APC without Gasworks. The benefits of a refreshing open space to be used as a break is completely irreplaceable to me and all other students alike. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I call upon Pia Martin, speaking to the same item 12.2. Please state your name and suburb before you begin speaking. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pia Martin and I'm from Port Melbourne. I'm a Year 12 at APC and I'm also one of the students who uses this park, and I can tell you all we respect it highly. I personally also remember facing a similar issue when I was at Port Melbourne Primary School, where we were successful in our attempt to access a local park. Now, I'm a part of our student leadership team, and for the past couple of years, I've been heavily focused on improving students' mental health and well-being. It's no secret that the well-being of students deteriorated as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and its consequential lockdowns. And so now is a more important time than ever to be encouraging students and our youth within the community to be accessing local environments and parks. Now, I'm quite bewildered that we actually have to have this conversation, but given that we are, I'd like to state that mental health professionals have been overwhelmed by the negative impact of our lockdowns on mental health. And so of all the times to allow teenagers access to an open, natural environment, this perhaps is the most essential. Now, when I say mental health, I'm not just talking about mild anxieties. Unfortunately, I'm talking about things like severe eating disorders, self-harm, deep depression, and worse, and unfortunately, these have all grown at an alarming rate. It is an established fact that time spent outdoors improves mental and general health. But this is getting really serious. I walk down the halls at my school at lunchtime and see teenagers spending their time inside on iPads because there is already not enough space for them outdoors. Beyond Blue reports that 1 in 7 young people will experience a mental health condition each year. Well, my school has 1,500 of those young people. And if allowing them access to an outdoor space can even help one of them, then it should be absolutely worth it. The students would like to think that their mental health and well-being would be one of the highest priorities of our local community leaders and of our community in general. Allowing us this one bit of open space for just over an hour a day would go a long way to letting students know that their well-being is valued. As active members of this community, we students would love to see our community leaders working with us to embrace outdoor activity. Please remember that we are discussing something that will make our school, and therefore our community, a far better place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I call upon Peter Hickey, speaking to the same item, 12.2, extension to Albert Park College trial use of Gasworks Arts Park. State your name and suburb, sir.
Peter Hickey, Albert Park. I'm a bit gobsmacked, to be quite honest, that there's a groundswell of residents against the school using the park. Certainly hasn't come to me. I pasted out today. We live 100 metres from the school and 100 metres from the park. I always see the kids coming and going. I actually, a month or two ago, I thought I'd better catch them at lunchtime, see what's going on. And I walked through Lemnos Square. Yeah, it's pretty crowded with kids, but if I didn't want to go that way, or if it didn't like that, just go the other way. They blocked off the street too to make that Lemnos. I have to drive a bit further, but the trees are really growing well, and it's looking pretty good. When I had a look, all the kids seem to be doing the right thing in their little corner, and that big extra area that for some reason the officers want to excise, all of a sudden, sort of changing the trial, but there's been a few complaints. Very few kids there, but it was a good place for them to walk around in and, as we say, enjoy the open air. Sue and I believe that it's a no-brainer to have that. Look at the history. Well, we can, but it's not going to create any more real estate, and I think everyone's pretty well justified the fact that it's desperately needed. So basically, I think we need also to look at the balance sheet. We've been there, 12 or 13 years, and when we moved in, there was a big school, empty, in disrepair, terrible school. And that's been changed completely. And you look around now, and you see this wonderful outgoing school, and you walk around and see the kids walking around, unsupervised, and going this, there and everywhere. And that's just fantastic. What a community asset we have. And so I think that we've got to be careful that we don't just look at our own narrow little interests. Think of the market that's there. I hope everyone's considering the market's future. That's chock full of people, most of whom, I bet you those stallholders, hardly any of them come from Albert Park, or they're not ratepayers. Full of people, full of cars. They even park in my parking spot in front of the house. But, that's a good facility. And so I really do think we need to look at the balance of what the school has provided, the great improvement to our community, and just be a little bit more broad-minded. I think that we need to be careful as a community that it's not them and us. The school, the state school, imposed on us by the state. But no, it's our community school, and I just think, we should value it. My goodness, that little corner there, it's a huge park there. I look at it every day, hardly anyone in there. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I call upon Judith Klepner, speaking to item 12.2, a former councillor for the City of Port Phillip. Judith, if you could state your name and suburb and then continue, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, councillors, and thank you to the Mayor for your welcome to country on behalf of us all. Yes, I'm a former councillor. I used to represent the Albert Park ward over an 8-year period, and I was heavily involved in the renewal process for Albert Park College. And I'm also a long-term activist in support of Gasworks as part of that role on an ongoing basis. I'm currently on the Gasworks board, but I'm not speaking on behalf of Gasworks because there are separate representations have been made through the processes about that. I was a bit surprised and saddened this week, given that it's been a very important week in this country where we've called for respect and equity, that hostilities have broken out about the sharing of open space, which is really, it's a very important commodity for all of us. And okay, because of COVID, I understand that we should have an extension of the trial. I'm accepting that, but I think that it should be across the original trial area, tweaked to exclude the terrace bit that's part of Gasworks. It's a confusing governance arrangement for both for community and for school and so on, that the park's managed by the council and the Gasworks buildings and so on, the arts facility are managed by the board. But I think that the councillors understand that relationship. And of course, Gasworks wants to work with council and the school to make sure that everybody makes the most of what we have in this community. So yes, I'm supporting also the notion of encouraging an increased presence of teachers, supervision in the areas, but let's not allow those teachers to become the go-to for all complaints and issues. They're trying to do their job of a sort of expanded yard duty, and maybe we really need the help from council to try and assist with processing for managing issues as they come up, as well as through the school. I'm really calling for councillors to join me in urging the community to be kind and to support everyone's enjoyment of the public open space that we have. It is a rare commodity. We are lucky in some parts of our city, but not in all parts. So where we have it, we need to share it. I'm seeking also that beyond consideration of the issues about licensing terms and licensing obligations and rules, how can we have council be more proactive in the process and convert what we've got currently, which seems to be a fairly combative arrangement, into a more goodwill that's going to outlast the trial, that's going to extend beyond the school hours, and perhaps set up some consultative processes, some feedback processes, so that council can facilitate a better engagement perhaps of the school and its students, because the school and its students, we want their caring for our parks, our environments, not only during school hours but beyond school hours, when it's beyond the school's control. So I'm looking forward to seeing us building that mutual respect beyond this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. I call on Christina Kinst speaking to item 2.2. You know the drill, Christina.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name's Christina Kinst. I live in St Kilda, and my granddaughter is at Albert Park Community School, or College, sorry. Look, thank you for the opportunity to address the meeting tonight. I'll be brief. I just want to briefly touch on the key points. Sorry, I'll take my glasses off. I want to draw out the key points from my email to you earlier, which urges that you reject the office's recommendations for the following reasons. First of all, the recommendations discriminate against state school children who live in the city of Port Phillip. The restrictions being imposed on them, confined to just one tiny corner of the public park, prohibited from walking across its paths and lawns, and from using its public amenities, do not apply to other residents nor to visitors. Secondly, it's hypocritical of council to restrict local children's use of council-managed public parks while inviting expressions of interest from organisations to hold business promotions and, I quote from the website, major events requiring closure of major roads, long stay events, ticketed events attracting over 1,000 participants, and ongoing market with more than 4 proposed dates. Finally, the concerns raised about the children's impact on residential amenity and park vegetation pale in significance when compared to the impact on same tolerated by council at other public parks. In my part of the municipality, it's in Kilda Beach, the lawns of public parks, such as the Catani Gardens, O'Donnell Gardens and South Beach Reserve, are regular hosts to thousands of revellers, to heavy infrastructure such as fences, stages, refrigerators, trucks, and to noise pumped from multi-stack speakers. Councillors, let's not treat Port Phillip school children as lesser citizens than the hundreds of thousands of people we invite to activate our public parks. I urge you to move quickly to finalise an agreement with the school that allows students the same access to Gasworks Arts Park as enjoyed by other residents and visitors to our city. There's no need for a trial. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I call upon David Gleeson-Payne, speaking to item 12.2. If you could state your name and suburbs, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for having me. My name is David Gleeson-Payne. I'm a ratepayer and a resident in Middle Park and new to the area, having moved home to Australia after 18 years overseas. Firstly, to the Council, congratulations for Gasworks. It is an awesome asset for the community. Secondly, thank you for the transparent publication of the background material to this issue. And I'm speaking to ask the Council to reject any restriction on the right of students to use the Gasworks Park. To Principal Cook, to you and your staff, you have something very, very special in your school. It's obvious from the support that you have here tonight. It's obvious from the parent-teacher meetings that are happening today. And I concur with all of the evidence that you presented, along with the staff, about the benefit of the park. So I have a couple of statements, some concerns and some questions for Council, if I may. So one, I concur that the park is a public space and it's for everyone. We might not like all the people who go to the park, but surely we can tolerate them. Secondly, this is absolutely an important resource for the well-being of the students. My son, Toby, is a traumatic brain injury survivor. He's one of 2 students at Albert Park College. I'm not asking for special treatment on behalf of Toby, but I expect that there are many students who, like Toby, find the park to be an important mental benefit in his day. He likes a quiet space from time to time, and the park provides that, or it used to provide that. And when he came home and told us one time that restriction in the park had been imposed, we were as disappointed as him. And then the third note I'd like to make is that I understand that Council has a budget of roughly $250 million, and I think about $50 million a year for open space, of which about $15 million is allocated for maintenance of open spaces. And so the concerns I have, one, what exactly is the legal basis for restriction of access to the public space? I can see in the licence that was issued last year that it's under the Crown Land Reserves Act, but I further read that that licence can only be given for a purpose other than those for which the land is reserved. And how is students going to a park not in the charter of the Act? Second, I'm concerned that Council is extending its reach and has perhaps an unintended consequence of seeking to raise revenue from the school by imposing a licence fee. And the third, the restriction I'm concerned is fostering an us and them mentality in the community. And like I said earlier, we might not like all of our neighbours, but surely we can tolerate them. And so my questions for Council are, can Council please clarify what exactly is the basis, the legal basis for restriction of access to the park? What exactly are the specific number and types of complaints from students, and can they be addressed? And then third, if there are different community stakeholders, then is Council prepared to, for example, create a quiet meditation space in the park, or perhaps a quiet dog walking space in the park? Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, David. I call upon Anita Aglitis, speaking to item 12.2. So if you could state your name and suburb, and you've got 3 minutes to speak to the item.
Thanks very much. This one. Hello, my name's Anita Iglitas. I've been living in the area for about 25 years, and although I have no direct association with the Albert Park College, I'm here to passionately support the school and its students. I first read of this issue yesterday in The Age, and I almost thought it was an April Fool's Day joke that a number of individuals would consider their rights to serenity would supersede the rights of 1,500 students. I sent out a couple of tweets and I got amazing support to find that, yes, in fact, this was the Council's position and there was a meeting to be held today. I've had very little time this afternoon to prepare a submission, but I prepared one and sent it to Council. All the members of the Council have that now, and I'll be issuing that publicly on Twitter, or an extended version of that later, because I think this is one of the most important social justice issues I've seen in my time in this suburb. I'm appalled that Council would consider it appropriate to seek to impose restrictions on students who have every right that we do, the other residents, visitors, have to this park, and reading through the details, that they would be restricted from using public facilities, that they're not allowed to bring sporting equipment, that they're required to walk on particular paths. None of these are the restrictions that are imposed on any other resident, and I think they must be completely rejected outright. The time restrictions are also completely unacceptable. We all know the mental health and physical health impacts of restricting open space. The school principal and students have spoken about that already, and that's essential to take into account. I also just find it grossly offensive from the viewpoint of social justice, equity, inclusion, taking note of the fact that private schools have vast areas of open space. I myself went to a privileged private school, and we had grounds that were vastly larger than the Gasworks Park. And I should not have more rights, and children who go to private schools should not have more rights to open space than the children who go to public schools. Finally, I'd like to raise also a point that was mentioned by the previous speaker about the legal basis of this. I've spoken to a couple of people today who, I'm the chief executive of a technology company. I'm a macroeconomist by background. I've spent I've held very senior positions in federal and state government and in the private sector. And the people to whom I've spoken believe there's no legal basis, and the next action would be a Supreme Court challenge if need be, and we would be happy to take that all the way to the High Court if need be. This has to be rejected. Sorry about that. It has to be rejected in its entirety. In other words, every student at Albert Park College ought to have precisely the same rights to walk wherever they wish to play whatever games they want to occupy the park at any time of day or night, and to occupy the whole of the park. They must be allowed use of the public facilities, and any restrictions on the right of the children at Albert Park College to use the school are completely and wholly indefensible. Thanks.
Thank you. I now call upon James McCaughey to speak to item 12.2. Welcome, James. James was the long-term chairman on the board of Gasworks. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is James McCaughey. I live at 39 Canterbury Road in Middle Park. I have been in the past a member of the board of Gasworks Arts Incorporated, with whom you have a contract to run the park. I no longer am, but I am chairman of the Gasworks Patrons and Friends Foundation that raises money for enhancements and additions to the park, often funded in collaboration with Council, a collaboration that we value in the common cause of making a wonderful park even more special. The Gasworks Park, like all parks or like most parks, is a public space. That public space is an arena for, and is indeed constituted by, many private pleasures. Some of those pleasures are individual, such as the great pleasure of suddenly finding yourself looking at a tree you haven't noticed before. But many of them are also collective. And many of those collective pleasures involve some measure of exclusion, either in space or time or in access of people. The market has been mentioned. The walking of dogs is valued by many people and is a great component of the park, but it excludes a number of other possibilities, such as bringing children there for picnics. There are concerts which involve some exclusion because of space being ruled out. And there is the presence of the children within fairly small, confined times during school terms. What I would want to say that sense of exclusion from those things does not render invalid those various activities and interests. It actually enhances the value. It means that the park is valued by those people for many different things. A public park, is constituted, is made great by the interplay of many values that people bring to it, many activities, many grounds for passion. So a public park is actually enhanced by the interplay of many private interests, particular commitments, and after all, each of those particular commitments brings a commitment to the park. And I think it's wonderful to think that unlike a park that really only came into being in about 1985, this is not long ago, with the generations and generations of students coming through, I look forward to seeing the park even more valued by generations of people in our community still to come. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, James. We've received a further 6 submissions to be read out on behalf of members of the public. So I'll call out the name of each member of the public and refer to the Head of Governance to read a summary of the submissions. So as part of this, Adrian Jackson has a question.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, we're going to use this opportunity to test if our microphones are back online. So the first public question comes from Adrian Jackson and it reads, Council states online that 64% of Parklet's businesses retained staff and 71% employed new staff. What is the actual number of retained and new staff, as percentages are vague? What is the financial and customer loss to retail and other businesses with parking space removed for parklets? Has Council given consideration to these other businesses? How successful will parklets be in the upcoming winter with wind and rain that is common in this period? Why is Council cherry-picking a few positive points concerning parklets to put online?
Kylie Bennett.
Through you, Mayor, we are incredibly proud that traders have been able to retain and engage new staff as part of the Parklets program. In the survey that was conducted, we did not ask businesses to provide specific numbers of staff, only whether they'd been able to retain or employ new staff, but not the number of those. The intent of Live Love Local is to support all traders and businesses within the municipality. We don't believe there has been customer and financial losses to other businesses. In fact, by ensuring our cafes, bars and restaurants are full, we are providing a customer base for neighbouring traders and indeed our local shopping strips. We're currently working with traders to plan for the colder months, with covering and heating options being considered.
Thank you. We've got another question from Adrian Jackson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. The question reads, while Council is maintaining plane trees, other councils are removing them and elm trees too. While diseased trees have to be replaced, is Council aware that shady foreign trees are good for combating global warming? Is Council aware that plane trees with their broad leaves absorb carbon, provide shade in summer and allow sunlight in winter? The leaves can be used as mulch. Will Council delegates to the MAV lobby other councils to maintain or plant climate change friendly trees? Will the Council delegate tell other councils to address their tree cover inaction?
I believe Lachlan Johnson will respond to this.
Through you, Mayor, the City of Port Phillip has 46,000 trees, with an even split between native and exotic species, about 50% of each, with about 12% of the city's trees identified as plane trees. All tree species contribute towards reducing the effects of global warming. The diversity of species is one of the methods used to safeguard our tree population against the changing climate. Although some councils may consider, and maybe are considering, reducing the number of plane and elm trees, most metropolitan councils, including the City of Port Phillip, have set themselves targets to increase their tree populations and/or canopy coverage measures, and council strategies support those efforts. Council's tree policy and strategy, Greening Port Phillip, an urban forest approach, is due for renewal. The community will be encouraged to participate and have their say to help council shape the future of our urban forest when this strategy is put to the community for engagement and input.
Thank you, Lachlan. Another question from Adrian Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, and the question reads, Council has banned smoking in outdoor areas. However, some council benches are next to cafe outdoor dining areas and used by smokers. Will Council place permanent no smoking metal signs on the backrest of all council benches in shopping strips?
Lily Rosick.
Through you, Mayor, Council currently conducts surveillance and enforces certain laws described within the State Tobacco Act 1987. These laws effectively prevent people from smoking while dining outside as part of curbside dining experience. State legislation nor Council's current local laws do not prevent smoking more broadly in shopping strips, including from public benches adjacent to curbside dining. Therefore, we're not proposing and recommending to erect signage as per the request. There may be an opportunity to review this subject as part of Council's comprehensive local law review that is due to commence later this year.
Thank you. Moving on from the questions, but also a comment in regards to item 12.2 from Adrian Jackson.
Through you, Mayor, the submission reads, the proposed use of Gasworks Park by the nearby Albert Park College is supported. When the high school buildings were completed a decade ago, I suggested that students be allowed to use the park, but the school opposed it. The students using the park would require the normal staff supervision that is used within the school grounds. End of submission.
We also have a statement from Tamara Jungworth on item 12.2.
Through you, Mayor, the statement reads, I support all the council recommendations in full, but would like to make sure that attachment 4 is amended. The map of the licensed area is not quite correct, as it includes our theatre terrace, which is not part of the park. It is an area we furnish and maintain at our cost, and it is part of our leasehold. The conditions in the licence do not specifically mention that climbing up our buildings and throwing balls against exterior walls is not allowed. Ideally, this can be listed in the final licence as behaviour that is not allowed, as these activities are disruptive of our daytime rehearsals. I recommend that the supervising teachers working in the licensed area are briefed on the conditions of the licence so that they are aware of which behaviours are excluded.
And then a statement from Pam Smith.
And this submission is in relation to item 3.6.6 and reads, this clause in particular has been ignored by the school until the last week or so. Since the beginning of this year, there has been a large increase in foot traffic heading back and forth between Dank Street campus and Pickle Street. I frequently counted 30 to 60 students in one go, back and forth several times a day. Until this last week or two, I have never seen them use the paths. On these occasions, they are only using the park as a thoroughfare as opposed to park enjoyment, and that is what we have pavements and roads for.
And that is the end of the public question time. So now we move on to 5, which is councillor question time. Councillors, do you have any questions for the officers? No? Then item 6 is our sealing schedule, but we have no items for sealing on tonight's agenda. 7 is petition and joint letters, but again we have no petitions or joint letters for tonight. We're moving on to 8 to 14, which is the presentation of reports. Now, given the number of people that have spoken to item 12.2, 12.2, I do propose to address that report first. So, councillors, in regards to 12.2, the extension to Albert Park College trial use of Gasworks Arts Park and Lemnos Square, are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? Councillor Pearl.
I'm wondering if council officers can give us some indication around evidence of staffing supervision that they've been able to either observe or they could provide to us around the actual level of staffing that's going on to supervise children during the specific times in the park, please.
Anthony Trail.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. In terms of observations, I've done my own personal observations and noticed mixed performance from teacher supervision. So I've seen days where there's been good performance up one end controlling traffic going across the park and movement, and I've seen days where teachers themselves have been walking across that traffic. We've also got lots of feedback from our community. We've got lots of feedback from the stakeholders in that area as well about their observations. We've also had our parks maintenance contractors who are in the park more frequently than officers also observe what's been happening at that particular site.
Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Mr Trail. As we heard, there's children as young as 12 using the park that would require supervision. What liability, if any, I imagine the risk would be quite small, but what liability or risk does council have over children playing in the park unsupervised if that is the case during the day?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Through liabilities, we've got the control of the students interacting with a public space, so it is a public space. You are allowed to have other people there. That was part of our resolution in March, that we wanted it to be co-locate the school and broad public there. So any negligence or incidents need to be managed on a case-by-case basis. We also have a requirement around the soil contamination at this particular site. So some of these licence requirements are to prevent the grass coverage, which is an important factor in our obligations at the moment, to keep the park safe and free for our community.
If I could just follow up, Mayor. Yeah, thanks very much. So just so I'm clear, under the agreement, my assumption would be that during school hours, at least, the children are the school's responsibility. So if there's not sufficient supervision in place, which it appears from your own evidence there's situations where that's the case, my assumption would be that the liability and responsibility of the guardianship of the children should sit with the school, not in any relationship with council. Is that understanding in the agreement, and is my understanding correct?
Through you, Mayor, and I think Councillor Sirikoff may have a similar question coming up. You're correct, Councillor Pearl. Both parties have a duty of care and liability, but the primary liability for supervision of the students during school time rests with the school. The liability and duty of care for council rests on the safe maintenance of the park.
Councillor Consola has a question.
What is the short history of why the exact licence space was proposed for the trial last year, and why has the recommended licence area now been reduced? And could council add a section to the agreement tonight, such as that grassed area by the aged care centre or any other area?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. The Gasworks Arts Park has many titles. There's 5 separate titles that help form that Gasworks Park. That's why the current title, I think, occupies 2 of those 5 sites. That's why it is a odd shape. They all have different planning controls for public reserve, so we do need those sites actually required parliamentary scrutiny to get formally approved, and that's a 6 to 8 month process. That's why that area of land was identified as part of the trial. Members of the community have suggested a part of reclaimed land, which is north of the current trial area. that would also require parliamentary scrutiny, an 8-month process. So that is something that we could entertain as part of the ongoing process, and an area that the community have provided officers as a nice underutilised space that could support that school use in that particular area. So that is something we as council can entertain going forward, but don't have the timeframes for this current upcoming trial.
Sorry, Phillip. So why has it been reduced to the area proposed tonight?
Through you, Madam Mayor, through March we set a lot of licence conditions around the trial use. They were worked on with the school and community prior to that trial period. Throughout this trial, we had many conversations with the school where there was agreements and assurance to make improvements. We saw a pattern of continued lapses and those rules being broken from our own observations and through feedback from our community. We did reduce the area to help the teacher supervision because we saw that as a core factor. We do note that the land currently in officer's recommendation provides 4,700 square metres, which is doubling the school's current open space land. Does give them access to tree shade, does give them access to Lemnos Square. We see Lemnos Square playing an important role in helping the ball sports and arrangements. We see the Gasworks Park component of our licence playing an important role in helping the recreation and connection with nature components. We also provide the school access to nearby Lagoon Reserve to help with their programs. They have 15 hours a week in terms of running their programs at that particular park, but which is a more of a link to their education program rather than the lunchtime and recess components.
Councillor Clark.
A number of people have raised tonight the rights of the students to access the park at all times. Could you clarify if that is actually the case? What is the rights or the legal rights, as was mentioned?
Through you, Mayor, it's complicated because, as Mr Trail suggests, there are 5 separate titles or separate regulation. Essentially, council is able to regulate access to the land that it owns and or manages in the same way that it regulates the use of personal trainers. They require permits. We do this primarily through a licence or in some cases a lease or a permit. So that's the way it's done. You're correct, one school student in uniform walking through the park, that's not a school issue. It's questionable as a former teacher, it's questionable as to the liability of the school at the end of the day when students leave. There's some different liability as students get older, but essentially it's regulated through agreements, licensing agreements such as this one, and that is primarily to, in our case, to ensure we meet the duty of care with ensuring that the park is safe and our maintenance obligations to the community, and I guess also to attempt to manage community conflict, which occurs increasingly in a highly dense suburb with limited open space.
I'll get you in a moment, Councillor Siderkov. Could I follow up on that, if I may, Tony? So, during school hours, is it under that students have to be on school premises, and is that part of the reasons that we need to licence it to an agreement with the school? Because technically, during school hours, they need to be on school premises.
So, the liability for the students during school hours rests with the school. As I said, a school student walking through the park in their uniform on the way to school, there's still a liability on the school to be supervising that student, but that wouldn't form part of this agreement. I mean, ultimately, this is an agreement to manage the use of the park. It was originally, as I understand, through a request from the school, and the licence sets out the conditions where all parties can meet their obligations. As I said, our primary obligation is to maintain the park, and in terms of our duty of care to the school and the students is to ensure the park is safe. One of the real issues we deal with here is the soil contamination, hence the importance of students and teachers sticking to the path. There are now goat tracks forming. We would have a concern that at some stage, if they become too degraded, they will lift the topsoil and expose the students to lead, which is the primary poisoning there, that's our well, in that case, the school both have a duty of care there. But the primary duty of care for the supervision of the students rests with the school, obviously. The primary duty of care in terms of the maintenance of the park and particularly keeping it safe for students and members of the public rests with us. Also, Council's own obligations in terms of child safety. We have an obligation around our child safe policy to ensure that students are safe from members of the public in the park, and that is shared jointly with the school, obviously.
Thank you. Councillor Sirikoff, did you have a question?
Thank you, Officer Keenan. I think he's already answered two of my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much. Just on the toxic soil, I see the argument that we don't want the park to be degraded, and I think that's a delicate balance. Given the volume of use it's now getting, there's naturally going to be degrading of soil, grass and soil, etc. But realistically, and we want to mitigate that. But realistically, how likely is a child to get lead poisoning based on being exposed to toxic soil? How much of a risk is that? If I went down there with my shovel and pulled up a couple of square metres of grass and left the soil exposed, if children were even playing on that, not ingesting it, walking across it, I can understand we know there's a risk there, but what is the risk of a child or anybody else being harmed by lead poisoning because that soil was exposed?
Who wants to answer that one?
Yep. Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Our council website has a lot of information about the contamination there. There's a lot of studies that have been done, and the state are currently going through that. Their calculations are over the lifespan of an individual. We are awaiting the state government to provide back their soil and groundwater analysis about how we can, protect the park and use it on an ongoing arrangement. So once that is provided back to council, we'll be able to have those mitigations ongoing.
Through you, Mayor, I don't think anyone here is qualified to answer that question, so we'll take it on notice. I don't want, and I don't think anyone should answer a question on the likely exposure of kids to lead poisoning. I think we'd need to get some expert advice. No, it's a risk, absolutely. How big a risk, I don't know, and what level of degradation, I don't know. But lead is the main poison there, and it's incredibly toxic.
Are there any other questions, or is it time to move on to the motion? So, councillors, we have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Martin, you'd like to move an alt motion. Okay. Are we getting it up on the screen? Could you just read out for us, Councillor Martin, the changes, just the parts in red or the crossed out parts, please, to this?
Well, wait, if we can just scroll through so we can see that in 3.5, rather than go with the recommendation from the officer's recommendation, the motion has now been altered to suggest that we'd run with the previous arrangement from 2020. So the trial that existed in 2020 with the land that was set aside would continue if this motion is successful. Under 3.6.4, we're looking at, had discussions with Mr Cook, and the suggestion is we increase the number of yard duty teachers by 50%. So if it was currently 2, we'd go to 3. If it was currently 4, we'd go to 6 or whatever. So I'll speak to the reasons behind this later. So there's a recommendation that we increase the ratio of the supervising teachers, and further down there that they be clearly identified to the community, and I'll speak to that in a moment as well. We keep scrolling. So we go to 3.6.5, please, once we've got this. So under 3.6.5, in response to one of the comments that we heard earlier today, we're specifying that there are no ball games against Gasworks walls. The no ball games is in the actual licence, but we're particularly specifying that it doesn't occur against the Gasworks walls. If we scroll down to 3.6.12, which is a new point, we're asking that if this motion is successful, that members of the school leadership team visit the park on a regular basis to monitor usage. To 3.6.13, that there is a very small portion of land, it's just a veranda that's in the current licence agreement that's not part of council land, it's Gasworks Arts land, and council doesn't have the authority to licence that area, so that very, very small part of that land, very, very small part of the existing area would be excluded from the lease. And the last one there, again, in response to one of the speakers earlier today, that we specified the children aren't climbing on the building roofs. So they're the suggested alterations.
Okay, do we have a seconder for this alternative motion? Councillor Copsey. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to this?
Firstly, can I note that although there was to be a 12-month trial of the school's usage of Gasworks Park, last year was very heavily affected by COVID, and I'm not sure that we were able to have a fully effective trial, so I think that's one very good reason for us to extend the trial till the end of 2021, so we can get a better idea as to how effective the usage of Gasworks Park is. Now, I'd like to note firstly, we've had some very, very diligent local residents who've been active on a daily basis, monitoring the students' activities in the park, providing diaries and regularly interacting with the council officers, and you know, it's very good that we've got such diligent and active local residents, and I commend them for their diligence and for their regular activity in reporting their information back to the council officers. And I thank the council officers for dealing with these almost daily complaints and for putting together the proposal that's basically come as a result of those complaints. Can I thank those people who've spoken tonight, and can I particularly commend our two students from the school who I thought spoke excellently. You must have gone to very good primary schools, and very, very telling words from all of our speakers, but particularly the students. So I've been a school teacher for 48 years, a school principal for 20 years, and I've got, I think, an understanding better than almost anyone else in this room how much students need open space, and particularly as a result of COVID, how important that open space is to them. I'm also aware that there are issues in Gasworks Park that probably don't pertain to any other open space in this municipality, possibly in Victoria. We have to be particularly careful as to the way that we use the park, and we've heard council officers tell us that there is significant pollution under the surface of the soil, and the information that we have is if that surface soil is disturbed, then we could be exposing people to all sorts of risks, hence the need not to have any activities which involve cutting through the topsoil in the park, so no ball games. Given that we have a major student need for use of open space, given that we didn't have a particularly successful trial because of COVID, given that we need to restrict some of the activities that occur in the park because of the risk of chemical contamination, given that there have been a number of people who've reported to the council that they've got concerns about teacher supervision, and whether these concerns are real or just perceived, if we can have our teachers very clearly visible there, I think this will make everyone who's using the park far more comfortable. Under those circumstances, and with the additional restrictions there, I think that this is a motion that we should support. And can I add finally that as someone who is a very strong supporter of schools, if the school believed that it didn't have enough supervision there, or if it wanted someone to come along and model the sort of behaviour that they'd like their yard duty teachers to do, I'm happy to put on yard duty vest and come down on any lunchtimes that I'm not involved in council business and help out with the yard duty supervision. So I commend the motion to you.
Councillor Copsey.
this one on? Yep, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Martin, for bringing this alt motion. What Council is attempting to do through this licence essentially is what I've heard from many of the speakers who have presented very eloquently tonight. We're attempting to make sure that this space can be used by everybody in a way that's cohesive and means that it works well. So I am happy to support the alternative that Councillor Martin has put forward, which is responding to a desire to make sure that supervision is happening, but not by limiting the space, by instead stipulating some further stuff around supervision. A number of the other amendments tonight, yes, they're of the nature that we, probably wouldn't want to have to say them, climbing on roofs and things, but I'm sure that that is well within the ability of the students of Albert Park College to work within these rules. I have been very impressed by the students who came and spoke to Council during the last term about what the park means to you, and to the representatives of the student leadership group who've come tonight. Thank you so much. You've done a great job representing your school community, and I hope you can hear from the debate that is happening in the chamber that really what we're seeking through these licence conditions, some of it is about good behaviour, and you have a fantastic role to play in representing your school community, not only to your peers but to the other residents in the area, and I know that you'll continue to do an excellent job in pursuing that. But some of what we're attempting to do through this licence is actually about the maintenance of the park, and it does have special requirements. I know it's not just students who've used that desire line through the park. I have been guilty of that myself, but I'll be making more of an effort to stick to the paths going forward as well. And I hope that this is a solution that will continue to provide access for students during your school day, and also make sure that we're minimising impacts on the park and that we've got a situation that's acceptable to the broader community as well. You are part of the community, and that's a right and a responsibility that I know that you're going to live up to. I just also thought that I would take the opportunity to mention that this is not a unique situation. We've got a number of areas that we work with Albert Park College on throughout the city. We've got Lagoon Reserve and the Life Saving Club as well, where we have good arrangements in place with the schools. So we hope that those will continue. And just the observation that I completely agree with many of the points that have been raised around students' wellbeing and mental health. And this could be indicative of an ongoing situation in Port Phillip if we continue to see schools that are planned without having access to open space. I think we really need to make sure that when schools are being upgraded or planned for, that we actually do have some space on site for pupils to recreate and to have passive recreation as well, spaces to relax. I hope that we'll see the department taking on board the situation that's arisen here, and certainly part of the reason that we're having to do this is that the location of schools and the use of our open spaces by schools does result in more intense use. There's no getting around that. And so in order for our community to manage that as we grow and we see more demand on our open space, we really do need the department and the state to come to the party on that as well. I'm very pleased to support this motion tonight, Councillor Martin. Thank you very much for working to come up with something that I hope will see us live the spirit of some of the comments that have come through in the contributions from the community tonight. Thank you everyone who's gotten in touch. Our inboxes have been very full on this topic, and I take it to heart. It's wonderful to see that the community wants to work together to make this space work for everybody. So I hope that this continued trial will help to achieve that. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Yes, I've got a clarifying question through you, Madam Mayor. Could Councillor Martin or someone confirm or clarify that originally it was the appropriate teacher supervision be in place, and then it moved to a minimum of 3 teachers, and now it's moved to, I think, a 50% increase. Is there a number of teachers that is required? A 50% increase on what number would that be?
Councillor,
3.6.4, sorry.
Tony Keenan.
The principal tonight indicated there are currently 4, so that would bring it to 6.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Bond.
I'll give this a go until it inevitably fails. I think many of the speakers here tonight are right. This is primarily an open space. It's a public park. And as a council, you know, our ability to limit what happens here is, I guess, very limited. I know the school have been using it over the last 12 months, but most of that time the children weren't in school, so there wasn't a real opportunity to see how this would operate. But during the time it was operating, there were a number of concerns raised by various other users, yes, the members of the public and dog walkers, but also as a member of the Gasworks Arts Incorporated board, there was concerns raised with me as a councillor representative on that board about some of the behaviours that were occurring in that park and the impact they were having on the operations of Gasworks Arts Incorporated. Some people may not realise that this is not just a public park, it's also a workplace for a number of people at Gasworks Arts Incorporated and also the numerous artists for whom Gasworks Arts Park is where they ply their trade, be it in the workshops surrounding the park or in the theatres inside. Feedback is that some unacceptable and disruptive behaviour has been occurring and that the people who work there and operate there felt that the school could do more to address these issues and be more responsive to these concerns when they're raised with them, and that the teachers on duty could be more attentive to the behaviours that are occurring and address it at the time. There's also contamination issues at this park which date back a couple of decades and hopefully we'll be able to deal with shortly, and so we'll be able to address those that were raised by my fellow councillors, and we can remove that particular concern from the equation in the very near future. And lastly, it's worth noting that the last 4 schools in Port Phillip that have been built in Port Phillip have been built without public open space or without open space, green space for the school, but they've all been built alongside public open space that is managed and operated either by the City of Port Phillip or, in the case of the South Melbourne Park Primary School, the Parks Victoria space. So this is a conflict that is occurring much more frequently across the City of Port Phillip. I think the first time we had this was back in the days of Port Melbourne Primary School, when there was requests from the school to use the parkland adjoining their primary school. And we had the same feedback from residents and users of that park that they felt having the students in the park was going an inconvenience, and I think it was managed quite well and it worked quite well, and the students using the park were able to do so with having minimal impact on the remaining of the park users. And hopefully that will be the case here as well, as we get to see a proper trial take place. Just if the school could be a bit more attentive to the behaviour issues and some of the concerns that are raised with them by people like Gasworks, who are trying to rehearse for plays, who are trying to earn a living in there while the school children are outside enjoying that wonderful native parkland that is Gasworks. So certainly support the motion here before us and urge my fellow councillors to do likewise.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Martin. As you correctly said, you're one of the more experienced people in respect of these type of arrangements. We appreciate you putting up your amended motion here this evening. I would say the Port Melbourne Primary School was a shining example, albeit a different age group to what we're looking at here, about how a council, a community and a school can work constructively together to get a good outcome. And I think that the big part of that was the supervision component of the park and the usage of it. I would make the point, I imagine it's much easier to supervise primary age children than it is to supervise, if that's even possible in some cases, secondary age children, given the age difference and the basic forces of forces that are at play there. So I understand the level of supervision in this area would be vastly more complex than what we experienced in Port Melbourne under that arrangement. I think the trial hasn't gone long enough, but what has seemed to have changed drastically in the time, obviously a similar time, but I think we were in this room when we considered this item, that's certainly, and I presume COVID was about to hit or had already hit. So the trial really hasn't taken place. So we're in the first infancy of the trial, but the relationship between the school, from a practical point of view, the relationship between the school and the council seems to have, I would say, anecdotally deteriorated over that time. That council meeting a year or so ago was quite a reasonably positive collegial affair, I would say. And the whole purpose of the trial that was put in place and the arrangements were put in place was to facilitate a formal agreement to ensure that all three parties, the council, effectively the land manager, the community and the school, had a say with some form of informal arrangement that hopefully was workable. Something's obviously vastly changed over the past 12 months. And there's probably some truth on both sides about what's happening in this argument, but I still think it's too short a time to determine whether or not this metric, this type of arrangement is a success or not, and it needs more time. But what I would say and what I would ask of the school, because I know you're here this evening, is please, from a risk and compliance point of view, and I'm sure as principal you're sitting here tonight would take this very, very seriously, but from a risk and compliance point of view, it's very important that appropriate supervision is in place from that point of view, but also from a good neighbourly point of view of the small number of complaints. And I think I've only ever received 2 complaints, to be frank, from people concerned about activities in the park. Mind you, I'm not a local ward councillor, so I'm not the logical place they would be coming to. The community sees this as a very key asset, and it's almost like people own this space as their backyard in some respects, and that's a great thing. We want to foster that, but everyone has to realise that everybody has a piece of ownership of this important community asset, and it needs to be shared. But as custodians of the asset, we also need to make sure that we're facilitating that in an appropriate way. So I'm happy to support the motion here this evening, but what I would like to see is council and the school make more steps towards getting back to perhaps a more collegial understanding relationship. But I think the key component as a councillor I see here is a real focus on supervision and communication with the students about appropriate usage of the park and being respectful to external community members. The comments by the Education Minister today were also very interesting. Council is acutely aware more than anybody else of the need for public open space, particularly when schools are constructed. This council has gone above and beyond most other inner city councils. We've had road closures to increase space for school play areas. We've openly given up parks and reserves. But what we're trying to do is get it under a balanced approach. With more schools coming online, it would be nice to see the Department of Education and the state government work hand in hand with council, particularly on the new secondary school, which we still are unclear about how usage arrangements will affect Murphy's Reserve, etc. So it's incumbent upon the council also to match the usage, particularly of that very finite space in the next 18 months as that school starts to come up to grabs. But happy to support the amended motion here this evening, and hopefully as a councillor I'm committed and happy to work with anyone on either side in terms of concerned residents or concerned parents or students using the park to make sure we get the balance right. But I think we need a bit more time to work out what the right balance is, and hopefully tonight, as a principal, I'll speak directly to you, you've walked away with a bit more feedback and a bit more guideline. I freely admit that this motion does restrict what you can do in terms of what you've been promised previously, but let's give this a go, see how it works. If it doesn't work, let's come back and refine it even more. But on this, as this councillor and this group of councillors, you have our support to try and get the best outcome from everybody. But thanks for coming this evening, and happy to support the motion, Councillor Martin.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Clark.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Martin for the amendments and the work he's done in putting this forward. I'd like to acknowledge all of the community's views that have been presented about the Gasworks Art Park. It's clearly very challenging when a school is built without any adjacent land for students to utilise, and the impact on students, and share the comments of other councils about schools being built without any park or facilities for outdoors. While I support the continuation of the licence and the space that's been provided for the students during recess and lunchtimes, I would encourage the school to ensure and improve the supervision to do their part in maintaining their licence commitments. We have received feedback from the Gasworks Art Board and council officers about some behaviours, so we must acknowledge the need to continually try and improve. Equally, however, the whole community has no choice but to work together and share and compromise over the park. Unfortunately, we have limited green spaces for the students, and finding harmony and acceptance in using this space is going to be required on an ongoing basis. For these reasons, I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Martin, for bringing this. Thank you to all the speakers, the 600 emails, the hundreds of Facebook comments, and all the calls. Clearly, it's a very important issue on both sides. Firstly, I want to assure the students that you feel included and safe. You're valued members of our community, and your youth well-being is a priority. I do not support photos being taken of students by the wider community, and hope that that is not an ongoing thing. We do share our small environment fairly well in the city of Port Phillip, and are lucky to have so much open space up in Port Melbourne and Albert Park. We need to find a harmonious existence here in Gasworks for users now and ongoing, which is part of this trial, but also the future design works of Gasworks. So we're looking to upgrade this park soon, and I think there's an opportunity through design to have a better use of this space. And personally, I'd really like to see the APC students involved in that process. Maybe we will have a path straight across because that's how it's used. Who knows? Everyone else has said a lot tonight about how we need to approach this trial extended to give you the full use of it, as well as the space that the kids need. I think the schools heard the feedback that supervision's important, and I trust that we'll see it now. So thank you, everyone.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Martin, would you like to close?
I think just about everything that needs to be said has been said. I've got one additional comment, and I'd like to acknowledge the work that Mr Trail and his team have done, and I'd like the school and its surrounding community to see if they can come to a way of resolving any issues that arise without our council officers having to act as negotiators in all of this. And I'm quite happy, as one of the local councillors in this area, to work with the school and for those residents who may have particular issues to see what we can do to try and improve the relationship, so that not only does this trial go ahead, but that hopefully at the end of this year we're actually approving this on an ongoing basis, or perhaps an even a larger area of parkland. But I think we need to make sure that we do whatever we can to improve the relationships between the school and its surrounding community, and I'm sure my other councillors, my fellow councillors, I will do whatever we can to help facilitate that. And yes, again, I commend the motion to you.
Councillors, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Councillors, we just need to take a 5-minute break I need to discuss something with the officers, so let's take a moment. Service review progress update and pressure washing service. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officers in relation to this report? No questions? Councillor Consolo?
If there's streets other than our main shopping streets, such as in Port Melbourne, Rouse Street, is there a way? How do those kind of streets get cleaned?
Lachlan Johnson.
Through you, Mayor. So Council has a comprehensive cleaning program. It sort of falls into basically three categories. There's street sweeping, which occurs in our activity centres on our streets. Obviously, we've got an approximate service level of once every 4 weeks that most streets in the municipality get swept. Some other pavement areas, such as in activity centres, actually get swept every night. On top of that, Council has a crew of litter pickers that pick litter across all of our activity centres and in our along the foreshore. And then, in addition to that, as this report pertains to, there's some pressure washing that occurs to actually address stains, address spills, biohazards, etc., on pavements throughout activity centres. Currently, Council undertakes regular pressure washdowns of most of the main activity centres. The ones that are not covered by that, so such as Rouse Street that you just referred to, there's not regular washdowns of those, but what we do in that case is if there are reports of biohazards or stains or things that are spilt, we'll send... Sorry. Through you, Mayor, we'll send Council staff there to respond to those on a reactive basis.
Another question?
Yeah, to follow on. So we would like the community to report when they see biohazards more to help Council?
Through you, Mayor, yes. So the community can report biohazards, things that need to be cleaned up through Council's Assist service. Our service level for attending to some of these things, it's actually articulated in the report, but for example, responding to biohazards, which might be like a syringe or something like that, it's within 2 hours. So Council's service level is really high in that regard, and we're able to meet that service level most of the time. So if the community do have concerns about issues, we encourage them to report them through to Council's Assist, and they'll be responded to.
Are there any other questions for the officers? Councillor Sirikoff.
I'm really interested in the photographs that were supplied to us earlier this evening, and I'm just wondering what is the process of, in particular, the stainless steel covers that go around the bins, to see that they're really maintained well and not in this really poor state.
Lachlan?
Through you, Mayor, I might ask Council's Coordinator of Street and Beach Services, Mr Darren Brownscombe, to answer Councillor Sirikoff's question around what the cleaning program is that is related to street furniture such as bins, bin surrounds, seats and other things.
Thank you, Darren.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question. Yes, I believe this would be Ormond Road or throughout our city, and we do wash down bins. Ormond Road essentially at this stage is once every 2 weeks. Our program does change throughout the city. Some are on request if they're out in a location that is less used, but also these bins here would require graffiti removal and detail clean, which is very different than a wash down.
Are there any other questions, councillors? If not, councillors, we have an office recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? I am interested in moving an alternate motion. If we could pop that up on the screen, please. If you could just scroll down so I could read out the adjusted. So there's an adjustment to 3.2.1 where we would cross out the dedicated high streets that we've listed there.
I think you listed. Sorry, through you, Mayor.
Sorry.
Through you, Mayor. I think that doesn't read correctly. I think you should cross out the word dedicated but leave the word high streets and furniture in there. Is that right? It doesn't read correctly.
Of high streets, yeah.
I think it should say of high streets and street furniture. Thank you.
Yes? That's all right. Yes. And then if we could scroll down to 3.3, which we are going to add in. And this is a point that reads, delegates to the CEO the ability to determine a program of equitable distribution of hygienic programmed pressure washing across the city within the approved budget. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Bond. So I will speak to the motion. Thanks to Janelle coming to speak tonight, but Janelle brought this to my attention about a year ago now, isn't it? I can't even remember. It was a long year. And what it's become obvious to me, although we have a good cleaning program, and yes, there's always this particular motion looks to improve that in ways. It is also inequitable how we clean our main high streets, and there have been a lot of streets that have not received much cleaning over the years. So my alternative motion looks to have a better program that allows streets such as Tennyson Street and Ormond Road, who have not been scheduled as often, and perhaps Armstrong Street, Bridport Street. So some of the other streets get a semi-regular wash throughout the year, still while maintaining Ackland and Fitzroy Street at the current proposed levels. But it just gives more flexibility so that there is equity across the municipality of the streets that get cleaned. So we're all interested in having clean streets. I think that's actually a top passion for all of the councillors this term. A cleaner city is a better city. So I ask you to support the alt motion, which captures everything else that the other motion did, but adds just a bit more equity across the city for all of our high streets so they can be clean and all of our residents enjoy that benefit. Councillor Bond?
I'm just wondering if you could scroll up to the page above this just to see the rest of the... There was one other change there, which was the removal of walk behind from 3.2.4, which I don't believe was read out. That was the other change from the original officers we got. Fully support this motion. Cleaning our streets is a core business of local government, and it's something that I think we've certainly improved over the last 3, 4, 5 months so far this year. So far this council term, I will say. There's been probably an improvement in the way we clean our streets, but we're still working on it. It's not perfect yet. We probably will never get to perfection, but we could certainly deal with the current issues and meet the expectations of our residents, who I'm sure we all get contacted from time to time or daily, especially at 6 a.m, with text messages from traders letting me know the current state of particular streets in and around our municipality. And part of what we're doing here tonight is responding to those concerns from traders, residents, not just in St Kilda but across the entire municipality. We've heard from Elwood tonight. I know the councillors up the other end at Gateway Ward have concerns about council focusing on the cleaning of Bay Street and Clarendon Street and other areas like that. So this is another response from council, putting a bit more money into this particular area, and we'll see how this goes and see if we can improve from where we are to try and get an outcome that better responds to the needs and expectations of the traders and residents. So I fully support this motion.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sirikov?
I will be supporting this recommendation, and as Councillor Bond has already said, that in the areas of Fitzroy Street and Ackland Street, these have deservedly needed cleaning and this extra cleaning, and I know that the shop owners will appreciate this. And as well, I also like the alt motion that we make it a more broader clean across the whole of Port Phillip, and make it more equitable. And I'm sure that the smalling shopping strips, such as in Armstrong Street and Bridport Street, some of those areas will feel that they've not been left out of this by making this extra change to the motion. Thank you.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll just quickly close then. We thank you to Janelle for pointing these things out. We can't know these things without our community letting us know, so I appreciate it. And thank you to all the amazing team behind the scenes that do all the cleaning work. There's a lot that goes on and you do a fantastic job. And hopefully these extra services will help make your job a little bit easier. So, councillors, I'd like to now put the motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Moving on to item 12.1, which is the extension to interim heritage controls, extension to Heritage Overlay 7 in St Kilda, Elwood, Balaclava and Ripponlea. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? No questions? Don't sit down too soon. Do we have any questions of the officers? If not, I have an officer's recommendation. Do I have someone who would like to move this? Councillor Copsey, and someone who would like to second it? Councillor Baxter. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to this?
I'll just reserve, thanks.
Councillor Baxter, sorry. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? I will quickly. This is really important. We're doing that review over, and this is sort of the end of the municipality. And while we continue to finish that over the view and pick up those various places we didn't in 20 years ago when it was first done, it's a real. It would be a real shame if we didn't look after the ones that are currently there while that process is undertaken. So I'm very much in support of this. All right, councillors, I will put that. I will now put the motion. All those in. Oh, Councillor Copsey. Sorry,
I won't. Thank you for asking, but you said everything I was going to say.
Okay, great. Apologies. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? That is passed unanimously. Thank you for coming. Moving on to 14.1, which is informal meetings and assemblies of council. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? If not, councillors, I have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this or something different? Councillor Copsey to move. Councillor Bond to second. Councillor Copsey. Councillor Bond. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Copsey. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is passed unanimously. 14.2 is the Audit and Risk Committee biannual report. Do we have any questions of the officers? If not, I have a recommendation. Would anyone like to move that or something different? Where are my normal people? Councillor Pearl, thank you. Do I have someone to second the motion? Councillor Bond. Councillor Pearl. Councillor Bond. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pearl.
The annual thank to the members of the Audit and Risk Committee, which is now Councillor Sirikoff and the Honourable Her Worship Madam Mayor. So it's a big job and we rely on you heavily, so thank you very much for doing that and your commitment to it. There's not much in this report in terms of detail, but it does give you a high level regard in the community, a high level of insight in terms of what the committee is considering, and we thank the committee for their service.
I will now put the motion. All those in favour? That motion is carried unanimously. Notices of motion. Councillors, we do not have any notices of motion tonight. 16 is reports by councillor delegates. Would councillors, anyone would like to report back? Councillor Pearl.
Just quickly, I have the honour to represent you councillors on the South Melbourne Market Committee, or Advisory Committee as it's now known as. The Advisory Committee has been very busy in the past few months administering the changes that the team at the market have been putting in place and also completing the strategic plan, which is going through the council process at the moment, and the budget submission. It's also been of note that a consultation has just concluded or is currently in the process of being concluded for the Cecil Street closure, which to the traders along Cecil Street has been a big success, and I think most of the feedback coming through surveys and anecdotally to me has been very, very very positive, but that trial will come to an end at the end of March, and that information will be reviewed. But the market is in a improving position, but still a very delicate position. Attendances are still very well down, indicating the high prevalence of reliance of many traders, particularly general merchandise traders, on the tourism industry. And it has highlighted to the committee really the place that the market holds from a tourism point of view, but also perhaps not necessarily as the core community asset from a food provision point of view as we would like it to be, given the increased flow through local supermarkets. The committee is considering this and is working hard to come up with a future vision and a future strategy for the market, so Council can consider that. But it's a great honour to represent you on that committee, and the market at the moment is in a process of rebuild, recovering from COVID, and I assure you, councillors, that albeit you get some complaints from some traders at the South Melbourne market, the vast majority dearly appreciate the support that Council provided over the past 12 months on COVID, and it was well above and beyond most landlords in Victoria, but also many other municipal councils. So be proud of what we provided, but it also provides a big challenge for the community to get the market back to a financially stable point of view, and that's what we are focusing on at the moment.
Would any other councillors like to report back? No. Councillors, we have 17 is urgent business. Do we have any items of urgent business? No. So 18 brings us to confidential matters. Now, councillors, we do have one confidential item tonight, being the report on Habitat Pop-Up Common Ground. So I now call on a councillor to move that the meeting be closed. Councillor Bond, to the public to consider this confidential item, and Councillor Pearl to second. So I will now put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried.